Ellie, welcome to Wealth Talk today.
Thank you for having me, Christian.
Fantastic to have you. We've got so much to talk about today, Ellie. We were just having a chat before we hit record, and we were kind of counting the number of pillars that you have got working for you, and you've nearly got a full house here. So we've got lots and lots to cover today. So why don't you just let our listeners know a little bit about yourself, Ellie?
Thank you. Yeah, so my name's Elli McKay, and along with my husband, Mark McKay, and our business partner, Mark Frayne, we've got combined property. We actually have three businesses. We have combined electrical, combined fire protection, and combined property, but my main baby is the property business. It's been a hell of a journey. My husband Mark and I were always pretty entrepreneurial, and we actually first dabbled in property back in, it was 2006. We were literally Googling get rich quick schemes, no word of a lie, and it was a bit of a toss up between stocks and shares and property. And we went for property, and long story short, we allowed ourselves to be sold a dream. I don't know what we were expecting Googling get rich quick schemes, but that's where we were at. And we invested in an off-plan property, and a property that we purchased for 125,000 was actually worth 60,000 by the time it was built. The development was flooded, the 2008 recession kicked in, and the project wasn't complete to 2010. So smack bang in the middle when property prices were at an all-time low at the end of 2010. And it was a bit of a baptism of fire, if I'm honest. At one point, I think we had 6 months to come up with about 40 grand. It was really stressful. I was in a low income sort of 20 grand a year job. There was a lot of beans and toast and Tesco value mints and super noodles and all of this kind of stuff. And if anything, I became quite jaded towards property. And as much as we do actually still have that property in our portfolio, I was very disillusioned with the whole thing. And at that point, I kind of retreated to the comfort and security of a 9 to 5, and it wasn't until years later really that we ignited that fire again. But something that became very interesting is my husband sort of dusted himself down a lot quicker than I did, and he went on to build his electrical business. And over the years, I started to see the passion and enthusiasm that he had for working for himself. On an evening when it was actually before we had children, he'd get the laptop out, and I just couldn't fathom it. I'm saying, but you're missing Real Housewives of Cheshire or whatever. He's like, this is what I love. This is, this is my purpose. I don't see this as work. This is exciting. This is stimulating, and I couldn't really grasp the concept. It certainly wasn't a path that I ever saw myself going down. But bit by bit, the sort of I sort of skipped a little bit. I was in quite a high-powered sales job when I was 17, 18. I was actually earning six figures at quite a young age. So if anything, my career kind of went backwards. And seeing the passion Mark had, it started to make me realise that I wasn't achieving my potential. But I didn't really have any thoughts as to what that would be or what I could do, which is very ironic because I was actually a qualified level 6 careers advisor, but I didn't really recognise in myself any transferable skills. So 2016, our electrical business, we had a very, very difficult time of it. A big national contractor went under, owed us a significant amount of money. We lost about 75 grand, and it came down to the wire whether or not we could keep trading. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because it was quite a defining moment for us, because up until that point, my husband, as a sole trader, they were probably earning 60, 70, 80 grand a year even. So not a shabby salary for the north of England by any stretch of the imagination. And I remember sitting down and actually having a conversation, do they just go back to being sole traders after everything that had happened, because it has such a stressful impact on the whole family. And long story short, the definitive answer to that was no. There was no way that we had endured all that pain and hardship to not make a success of our lives. And that's when we started tapping into what was possible, and we started leveling up in terms of what success meant to us. But it wasn't until 2018 I was actually made redundant whilst I was on maternity leave from my job working in custody as a careers advisor. and it was it was quite a low moment really. I actually went on to claim job seekers allowance, and the reason I mentioned that is because I believed I had to do that to be able to get my stamp and pay my national insurance contribution, and state pension was the only option for retirement, which obviously we know, Christian, is far from the truth. But yeah, to go from somebody that previously earned six figures to be walking in with my double pram to the job centre was quite a low point. And I'm quite into mindset and the law of attraction, and that was the point that we were actually introduced to a bit of property training. And 2.5 years in, a hell of a lot's happened, but we now have a multi-million-pound property portfolio. We've got a really strong personal brand. Our fire protection business is on course to do 7 figures in its first year, and our electrical business is thriving. So we've turned it around.
You certainly have. I can think in my head, and I'm sure many of our listeners, you've seen the image online of like the iceberg where you see kind of 80% under the water, right? And that's that hard work. That's all the, the failures, the challenges along the way. And success is just that little bit at the top that people see and think, oh, it's easy for them, right? And they don't see all of that stuff that went beforehand. So resilience certainly is another word that comes to mind there. So I just want to pick up on that first interaction with property you said back in 2006, because I think it's something probably familiar to a lot of people, is when you discover this world of entrepreneurship, of business, of, property, you get this excitement, right? And you think, wow, this is amazing. It's going to solve all our problems. We're going to be millionaires in the next 12 months. And of course, there's a lot of marketing hype and spin online that unfortunately promises those kind of things. But, what are some of the lessons learned from those early days when obviously thinking things were going to be so great, and then obviously it didn't turn out exactly as you expected?
Well, that was, 2006, it was back in the day where you could buy and refinance in the same day, I just wish I knew what I know now back then, because we would definitely be billionaires by now. It must just have been a phenomenal time to do property. But the reality was we knew nothing. We didn't do any due diligence. We were kind of pressured into really over leveraging. We left ourselves in quite a vulnerable position financially. We ended up having to borrow off family and all sorts of things just to be able to make our minimal contractual requirements. We didn't particularly go to a specialist conveyance solicitor. There were so many mistakes and there was so many learnings from it. But and of course at the time it was horrendously stressful. But I'm a great believer in channeling the pain into power. And the lessons learned from that have been invaluable, and all the mistakes and all the failures. And there's been many, many more. But it would be like Oprah if I took a deep dive into every single failure. But you're not. The word failure is very subjective, because unless you learn from, if you're learning from the mistakes, and you're some of the mistakes we made. Relatively speaking, that property's still in negative equity now, but it cash flows well. But some of the lessons we've learned and the mistakes we've made over these smaller investments will potentially save us tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds on the bigger deals that we're now starting to broker and to look at. So it's been invaluable experience.
And then in 2016 when you say you then had the new, no, probably later actually, the new education. So when you kind of had your second stab at property, but you actually approached it obviously with some proper education. So what year was that exactly, Ellie?
So that was 2018. It was early 2018. We were going to do some property training. Unfortunately, we lost my father-in-law quite suddenly to cancer. So we didn't actually do the training until the summer, but we were educating ourselves really from the start of 2018. Now, it was originally my husband. It was all very law of attraction how this came about. So we have offices for electrical business over in West Yorkshire, and it was actually our business partner's cousin who is already, hugely successful in construction. He's out doing all sorts of stuff in Dubai and various other places. It was actually him that came across this property training, and he attended it, and he was absolutely, his mind was blown. He was just euphoric after coming back from it. He's like, "You guys need to do this." And it was actually my husband and his business partner that were originally going to do it, because they were the entrepreneurial ones. I'd never really saw myself in that capacity. And my husband, I started hearing him watch. He was watching things on the iPad, or he'd be putting them on the Apple TV, or they'd be coming out the telly in the kitchen. And there was all this mindset chat, as well as talking about the property stuff, because I just saw property, after the experience I had, I thought, oh no, that's not for people like me. I'm not interested in that. And I was listening to this mindset chat, and starting to think, well, if it's humanly possible, then it is within our grasp. And at this point, I should mention as well, I had post-natal depression. I was in quite a bad state mentally. I was on all sorts of medication for anxiety and depression. We'd had a really tough couple of years for various factors. Obviously, I mentioned losing my father-in-law, the business nearly going under. I swear, it was a bit like Oprah at this point. And hearing this mindset chat, it kind of blew my mind, because back in my sort of late teens, early 20s, when I was in quite a high-powered job, I was quite into the Tony Robbins and the Paul McKenna and things like that. And as my career sort of nosedived, I became pretty disillusioned with all that kind of thing. I just thought it was a load of American woo-woo, rah-rah, a load of rubbish. And it just became quite cynical, I suppose. And we went to do this property training summer, July 2018. And I don't think I'd have had the confidence to walk through the doors had I not had Mark by my side. And I remember it as part of and I mentioned to you just before we went live with this, what particularly drew me to these specific property educators was because it wasn't just property training. There was a lot of chat on the mindset, but it was also around building long-term wealth and introducing me to the concept of SSAS, something that I'd never heard of, and trust, and how to really structure a business and build long-term wealth as opposed to get rich quick, because that's what we're in it for. And it was a life-changing experience for me. And of course, property education is just the start. I'm still very heavily involved in them 2.5 years down the line. I don't think education ever really stops. But within 4 days of leaving the property education, we'd secured 2 properties. We did our first 2 deals 4 days after leaving with none of our own money. So it was no money down, and some people challenge that and say, but you need money for property. Of course you need money for property. It just doesn't have to be your money. So right.
Well, I want to pause you here then, Ellie. So this is where it gets exciting, because I'm sure it's been good to really understand kind of where you were, because myself and Kevin, we teach our members obviously that the starting point is to get really clear on where you are now, where you want to get to, what is the goal, what's the objective, right? So we know that you were starting in a pretty level starting point. You didn't have loads of funding behind you. You'd had a very difficult time with your business a couple of years beforehand. Obviously mindset was not at its highest point either. And in less than, we're talking about 3 years now since then, right? Pretty much end of 2020 now. And how many properties do you now have in your portfolio, Ellie?
23, but really we've only been building our own assets for the last 12 months. For the first 18 months, we're very much doing it for other people. So including our pipeline, it's 23 properties. I think coming to about 2.5 million GDV.
Okay, and a good turnover amount in your businesses as well this year. Yeah. So, okay. So let's look at exactly how did you do this in 3 years? So what were some of the steps, and how have you managed to utilize home capacity, the pension pillar, the property portfolio pillar, the business pillar, joint venture pillar, and now IP as well?
Well, so to start off with, I use every last penny of our redundancy money to get educated, every last penny. We, in terms of the joint venture one, that's a nice easy one. Our first 2 properties, our first out of the 2, We did a lot of joint ventures to start with, where we were like the sweat equity, if you like, the boots on the ground. We would source the property, we would do the negotiations, we would do the project management, we would deal with the estate agents and everything in between. And we basically have a silent investor or joint venture partner. In this case, it was a property friend of ours who had actually done the same training as us, but he was a fighter pilot out in Qatar at the time. So it was a mutually beneficial arrangement. So yeah, that's how we sort of, and I think the more experience they get, the less you want to be moving away from the 50-50 model, because I think when you start in property, for anyone, I think this might resonate with any of your viewers who are quite new to property, you tend to put the person with the money on the pedestal, probably because you don't have much of a track record, you don't have much experience, and you can think, oh, who's going to invest with me? And what you soon come to realise, the more you do property, how much expertise and skill you're bringing to the table. And actually, the person with the money is not the golden goose, that it's actually your value. You're bringing more value as the person that's sort of doing all the work. So yeah, that's how we started with that. We went all in. We sold our house. We moved into a rental property, and yeah, we had, not huge amounts of money. We must have had maybe 150 grand in equity, which we put to work. Not necessarily in property deals, but in some of it certainly might have been allocated for property deals, but it was very much to look at our infrastructure for our business, look at setting up the SSAS, look at setting up the trusts, looking at putting that into further education for specialist areas, whether that might be automating your business or specific mentors for specific things or consultations, which we're a great believer in. And yeah, we put that money into our business, which absolutely gave us the catalyst that we needed to be able to make some moves pretty early on. And it's not really, like I say, until the last 12 months that we started focusing on, we traded, or we did flips, assisted sales, traded or deal packaged. I think it was 25 properties in our first 12 months. Not quite sure that the 6 months after that we were doing bits and bobs, and this last 12 months we shifted our primary focus to building our own wealth, building our own assets, because we wanted the security of that residual income. So we still do our buy to flips. We almost have two arms of the business, but now our priority, we've switched from sort of offering portfolio services to our clients to now we work with fixed return clients, and we use investor finance to build their own property portfolio.
And the electrical business, that you managed to turn that around, and also you've started another business as well.
Yeah, so the electrical business is doing really well, actually. It was hit quite hard with COVID, but we're coming out the other side of that now. We've secured some really lucrative contracts. That's looking very exciting. But our fire protection service, we only launched it in July, and some of the contracts we've secured are absolutely mind-blowing. So it's very proud to say, although I've not really got that much direct involvement and can't take any credit for it, very proud to say that business is definitely on course to smash 7 figures in its first year. So
so I mean, it's incredible if we talk about the levels, moving from a place of financial insecurity to security to independence. The average person, we say, if you're really committed and focused, it's a journey that you can achieve in 5 to 7 years. You've certainly done that in less time. Why do you think you've been able to achieve that so quickly, Ellie? Is it the mindset? Is it the skills? Was it the resources? What do you think was the key factor there?
I think a lot of it, again, we were just chatting, because I think one of my biggest strengths is relationship building and networking. I truly believe that relationships are the highest form of currency. It's getting around to the right people. I'm not talking about when I started getting out there and being active on social media, which plays a huge part in our business. We raised last year £4 million just off LinkedIn alone. When I started my online presence, it was pretty much for the sole purpose of raising investor finance. It was the concept of, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you, because people need to know who you are in order to approach you to do business with you. But over the last couple of years, I've realised really that the raising finance is one small element of it, and actually the currency of relationships is worth a lot more than investor finance. It's connecting with the right people of influence, being around people of a problem-solving nature, entrepreneurs, high net worth. I've met some phenomenal people. I've now set up my podcast, and I've had some, great people on there. I've got Rob Moore, I've got Ricky Hatton, I've got Neville Wright, I've got Nick James, I'm speaking to Gerald Dratner. It's just insane, and there's no monetary value to those relationships. It's so much bigger than that, and I believe the more, this maybe sounds a bit spiritual, and if you'd have said to me a couple of years ago, I'd never classed myself as a spiritual person, but the more that I in particular have worked on myself, I've worked on my own mental health, have really looked at becoming the best possible version of myself. I've started to do meditation, starting to look after my physical health more, trying to really look at where I can improve, how I can add value, not just in the business world, but in all areas of my life. I have found that since I stopped focusing on the money and started focusing on the people, the money's just flowed a lot more freely.
And another thing that's really important is understanding your natural skill sets, how you get in flow, and in terms of wealth dynamics, which is an assessment that we put all of our members through. You're definitely the creator, the kind of front person, would you say, in a relationship, Ellie, and your husband is more the steely, detailed guy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's a technical guy. He deals with, we've got project managers now, but he deals with the project managers. He's overseeing at a high level all the projects. He's the numbers man, the data guy, the technical guy, and it works so well. He doesn't particularly like the whole social media thing. He absolutely understands the value of it, but at the moment we're still trying to transition from working in the business to working on the business. So interestingly, one of the markers of success for us, a lot more so than money in the bank, is every time we get a job off our shoulders and onto somebody else's, and we get another job role systemized and sort of automated and structured and away from us, we just see that as another step towards success, because when you truly have that time to work on your business development and growth and the high level director duties, then you can really step away from the minutiae and grow properly. So my husband's very much still, when you have as many projects on the go as us, he's very operational still. And over the next 12 months, our objective really is to continue to onboard more staff. Our next key hire, we've just taken on another full-time office person and a full-time joiner to support our project manager, but our next sort of key hire is going to be an operations manager that can then deal with the broker, solicitors, accountants and everything else, and allow my husband to remove himself to the next tier, which I think is when we'll see the real growth.
Yeah, because as you say, the money, and I heard you refer on a previous video that I was watching, it almost becomes like monopoly money in some respects, right? And then it's actually the financial freedom, it's the other freedoms that leads to. So, freedom of relationship, freedom of time. So, but what have you been able to do now in terms of, your time? Because obviously you're a busy woman, but has it allowed you to, step back a little bit, maybe spend more time with children?
Yeah, something, it's people are always like, how do you have time to do that? I'm like, because we create our own lives. We prioritize what's important to us. We're not going to miss sports days. Something I'm quite passionate about. Of course, you need to do the hours and things. My husband was on his laptop to midnight last night, but he's also there from 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock every single night with the kids. He still does the school run every morning. Yeah, he's up at 5. We've boxed off a couple of hours before that. But I think it's choosing to live life on your terms. A lot of people just seem to, and I think this is something we've inherited. Everybody's working towards their retirement. Like, life starts when you retire, which is just ludicrous. You're almost writing off the best years of your life, and it's something we're definitely getting better at, which is taking more time out as a family and making sure we're leaving our phones in the car or leaving them in another room so we can focus on spending time. We've got 3 children. They're still very young, 3, 4 and 8. We've just got 2 little puppies. So what's the point in all of this if you can't pick and choose the best parts of your job. And of course, it's not a job, and it is our passion. So I wouldn't mind sitting and chatting about work or getting on the laptop on a Friday night because we love what we do. But it certainly won't be to the detriment of our here and now. And I mentioned to you, Christian, in 2.5, 3 years, this will be the first time I've actually given myself a pay rise, because all our money pretty much gets pumped back into the business. And yes, we've gradually upgraded our life, nicer house. We're just actually moving in a couple of weeks. We've got a nice new house we're moving into, nicer cars. Yet you do start to get the trinkets of your hard work. But really, we're in this for the long term. And why go out and perhaps this is a mindset thing for me now, but why go out and spend 30 grand on designer clothes when I could be putting that into another property at the moment and really cementing our wealth, knowing that is going to come within a couple of years anyway. So use this opportunity. There's so much opportunity at the moment. It's such an exciting time to be in property. I'm just kind of reluctant really to spend too much money. I just want to pump it all in.
Yeah, well, to build assets, which is obviously the key. And, I think for so many people, it was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki talking about simple things like you don't buy a car, you buy an asset that then pays for the car. And, for many people, that's just something they've never been taught, right? And they have that light bulb moment at different periods through their life. And you certainly had that, and you grabbed hold of it, and you've done amazing things, Ellie. But for anyone listening, as maybe a final thought from yourself, who still feels a bit stuck, they still are not exactly sure on what that path ahead is for them. They've tried a few things, it hasn't worked. Maybe their confidence is a bit knocked. But hopefully after listening to you today, it is inspiring to hear that there's nothing that needs to stop you. If you believe in yourself, that you can achieve it, if you surround yourself with the right people, what else would you say to those people?
Well, this is exactly why I share the hardships. It's not meant to be as a woe me. There's people that have got, had a far tougher time than I have. But when people see me now talking confidently on stage or doing live videos or on podcasts or whatever else, they're like, "Oh, it's all right for you, Ellie. You're confident." I'm like, I really wasn't. I was having anxiety attacks less than 3 years ago. But we're all capable of so much more than we are led to believe. But you do need to be consistent. I think, particularly with what's going on in the world at the moment, be very selective what you're letting into your life in terms of the noise. And by noise, I mean mainstream media. Are you spending your time? And there's no judgment here, because we all have completely different goals. But if you are striving for more, are you watching depressing soaps? Are you listening to mainstream media? Is it just all doom and gloom? Because that's not going to help your mind frame. Start following key people. Don't overwhelm yourself. Listen to a few key people if you resonate with their content. Make sure you've got some good audio books on the go. Learn, educate yourself. If you've not got the money to go and do it straight away, then there's a lot of free stuff out there. There's some great YouTube videos. There's some fantastic ways to educate yourself. And I think just realizing that it is possible. I'm nothing special, but you do have to take action every single day. I see a lot of people starting and stopping, and you're not going to get anywhere with that. I actually did a post about this yesterday, because there's some days I don't feel like we're really making much progress, but you don't quite, as long as you're making any sort of progress, doesn't matter how small the step is, you will be absolutely amazed at the compound effect of that. But yeah, get around people that are further down the path that you want to travel, because they will elevate you, they will inspire you. I'm lucky enough to spend a lot of time with millionaires, multimillionaires, and even billionaires now. And, they're not sat there talking about what tier they're in and things like that. It's a solution mind frame. And I know times are tough. I get that. But, every downside has an upside, and there's more opportunity out there at the moment off the back of this global pandemic than there has been for a while. And a lot of us have been widely anticipating quite a deep recession anyway. And obviously, I do think that's inevitable. If you know what you're doing in property with the right education, then you can very much use that to your advantage. Yeah. Great words there, Ellie. And if anyone would like to follow you closer, you're all over social media, Ellie. Where's the best place for them to connect with you? So LinkedIn, Ellie McKay LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I've got a Facebook page, Facebook profile, YouTube channel, and my On a Mission podcast is about to launch. So please listen to that. I've got some amazing guests, and it's not around property. It's around people that want more from life, and people that have reached the top of their profession and know what it takes to get there.
Cool. We'll definitely be sharing that for you when that's released. So thanks so much, Ellie, for sharing with us today. Really appreciate it. Well done, and excited to see where you head in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.